Welcome to Confessions by Banana Ketchup. My history of demonic activity. Oh boy, this is gonna be a lot, but I've been working through things and I'd like to see what this community has to say about my experiences. To begin with, I should explain some basic personal history. Identities, real names not revealed, obviously. I have a family of 5 plus 2 spouses. My parents, my 2 brothers, my oldest brother's wife, and mine. Before getting married and moving out with my wife, I lived in the same house for 19 years. My parents bought it when I was like 6 months old, and I got married during college, so I've only ever known that house and my current apartment. I had some traumatic experiences when I was very young that are tied to one of the rooms in my parents' house, and then, a few years later, my parents had me move into that room. During my time in that room, I started having vicious nightmares, all involving me watching helplessly as the people I loved were brutally murdered in graphic and creative ways, in which one constant fixture was a figure that seemed to be observing everything and watching me, from a distance, never directly interacting with the chaos, but always on the edge of my vision. This figure always looked the same, a tall mass of complete blackness, with the exception of an antlered animal skull where its head would be. Anyway, when I went to college, moving out of that room, the nightmares stopped completely. I didn't have a single one until I came home for winter break and stayed in that room again. During that break, my then fiancé stayed a few nights at my house with me. We slept in separate rooms, but both on the same floor. During the night, she texted me that she was having a panic attack and that she thought she was seeing a figure. When I asked what it looked like, she described the figure from my dreams exactly, and I told her to start reading Psalms in the hope that it might help. She immediately felt better. Not sure if that was because of the scripture itself or placebo, but I'm a firm Christian, so I think it helped. And we talked for a while about it before deciding to keep an eye out for more spooky skits. That night, I had the worst nightmares of my life. The next morning, I felt numb and out of commission, and I didn't recover until the next day. Every time I've gone back to that house since, I've felt an overwhelming malicious presence there. It has the effect of weighing down on everything. It kind of feels like having cotton in your ears and making everything feel super depressing. Recently, there was another development. My grandfather passed away this last semester and my grandmother moved into the house with my parents. She's a troubled person and she brought a lot of toxicity and conflict into the house. Last time I was there with my wife, we immediately felt something horrifyingly evil. I've always had a sensitivity to spiritual things, and it was like nothing I felt before. I think it was feeding off of the conflict in the house and making things worse. My cat, who we'd brought with us, immediately slipped into what looked like a super depressive state. She wouldn't play or do anything, no matter how hard we tried. The kicker was this: that time I decided to try something. I walked into my old room, the one tied to my traumatic experiences, and tried to feel for any sort of extra bad energy. It was tangible. My mom and I repainted that room the last time I was down there, and it felt very cathartic, but the power was still there. Before anyone says so in the comments, I've thought about doing some stuff like sage smudging and ritual cleansing, banishing, but my parents are super conservative and would definitely think I was trying to bring evil witchcraft into the home, so that's a non-starter. On an instinct, I touched the wall in the room and immediately had violent visions reliving my trauma, except the spirit was there, watching and seemingly gloating. It felt like it was trying to rub what happened in my face, like a look what I'm capable of sort of thing. My wife told me that I went white as a sheet and started shaking and crying, but I don't remember it. It behooves me here to add that I've seen several therapists about my traumatic experience. I don't think it was a PTSD flashback, as I've mostly worked through everything and I'm pretty mentally stable now. I'm relatively certain that the presence in my childhood home is evil, even demonic. I've talked to my mom and I get the sense that she doesn't really believe me. She talked about how she prays over the house constantly, but my wife and I are pretty sure of it. I may talk to my brothers about it when I see them again. We are all going back to the house for Thanksgiving in the next week or so I'll see them soon. When I go home again in the next week, I may make an update post. If so, I'll link it to it here as well. Let me know what you all think, and if there is anything I can really do about the situation. Update edit. Okay, so I had a request for an update, and since I'm currently at my parents' house, I can tell you all about some of my current experience. On my way to the house, a rock appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, on the road just half a mile from my house, and I hit it hard enough to crack the wheel open, despite only going a bit under 40 miles per hour, which I find pretty suspicious. I also was having increasing feelings of nervousness as I approached closer to the house, which reached their peak a bit before I hit the rock. When I got to the house, finally, I immediately felt something there. It wasn't nearly as strong, but it felt like it was fighting back against all the effort being put up against it. My mom confided in me that she felt like I was telling the truth and there was something there. My grandmother has just been placed in a nursing home, and when she left the house, remember I mentioned that she was a source of conflict. It had been exactly 3 months since she arrived, which my mom and I both took as a sign that there was more going on. When she left, it took a lot of wind out of the feelings of darkness and conflict in the house, and the air feels much clearer, but even still, the presence remained. I've been repeatedly praying over the house and reading relevant passages of scripture whenever I get the chance. I'm also wearing a cross for protection, and I've set up some symbols around my room to serve as guards. The nightmares have come back, but they aren't nearly as bad as they usually are when I'm here. It helps that I've mostly stayed away from the room. All this to say, I think the presence here is still working to control all of us and keeps us down. I'm fighting back as best as I can, while also trusting God to keep all of us safe. Any advice would be appreciated. Thank you, Crisrofiel, the author. My grandmother's abandoned house too. So a couple of months ago, I've posted on this site about the haunting experience that I had at my grandmother's house. A couple of days ago, my uncle and his family, the one who built the house in front of my grandmother's house, came for a visit. We all, including my parents, had a chat over some tea until somehow, I can't remember how, the conversation turned into the haunting experience they had at the old house. Here are their stories. My father's. One night, while we were all spending our weekend at grandmother's house, my father woke up when he felt that he really needed to go to the toilet. The toilet was located downstairs, and instead of one, there were 2 rooms dedicated to the toilet, with 1 room dedicated for a shower in between the toilet. My dad took the right toilet since it was the nearest. While he was doing his business, he heard that the door on the other toilet was open and the water pipe was turned on. My father didn't think much at that time. Probably someone else decided to use the toilet during the night too. After he finished cleaning himself, just as my father left the toilet, he could hear that the person in other toilet was washing up. We Malay use water here instead of tissue paper. Mom called my dad, thinking that the other person was my grandmother. There was no answer. Then he called my name, my mom's name, and even the nanny's maid's name, all with no answer. He started to feel that something was not right. The person inside was not replying at all, yet my father could still hear the water flowing from the water pipe and someone cleaning themselves with said water. Then, the sound of someone cleaning themselves stopped, and slowly the door opened by itself, and my father told me that the toilet was empty, the water still flowing from the pipe, and the floor was wet. My father immediately turned off the water and ran upstairs to sleep. Cousins. Cousin 1 told me that her story happened while my grandmother was still alive. She and grandmother were the only at my grandmother's house at that time. She was watching the TV in the living room while my grandmother was in her bedroom having her afternoon nap. Suddenly, my cousin heard that the main door that connects the living room to the outside was knocked. The knock was soft, a simple 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. There were just knocks, no salam or hello, which usually happens, and that made my cousin curious. She stood up from her chair when the door was knocked again, except louder. Knock, knock, knock. There were just knocks. Again, no salam or hello or name call. My cousin couldn't tell why or how, but she somehow knew that whatever that knocked on the door was not a person, hence she says anything. She slowly walked towards my grandmother's room, and then the knocks came again. 3 times and louder, and again 3 times and louder than the ones before, and again 3 times so loud and hard the door was shaking. Suddenly, the walls next to the door too were knocked. Despite the curtains were open, the glass was too opaque to see the outside, but cousin could see that there were shadows. She immediately switches off the TV and ran to my grandmother, who was still sleeping despite the loud knockings. By the time she reached my sleeping grandmother, the entire wooden house was shaking because whatever it was or were, all the doors that led to outside and the walls were being knocked, even the one upstairs. It was like hundreds of people came and knocked on the doors and walls. Cousin kept hugging my grandmother, who surprisingly was still deeply asleep, and suddenly, after about a minute or 2 of non-stop terror, everything stopped. It was dead silence, no knocks, no animal sound or whatsoever. The only sound she could hear was her own deep breath, my grandmother's sleeping breath, snore, and the creaking sound of the ceiling fan. Uncles. My uncle's story happened during the demolition of the upper part of my late grandmother's house, and it went on for a while and sometimes even until today. He told me that he was there when the demolition crew suddenly malfunctioned multiple times and a few of the workers were casually working and walking when they were pushed by nothing. But since no one got hurt, everyone simply stays quiet and continue working. The last part of the upper house that was demolished was a set of stone stairs that connects the upper floor and the lawn. It was used as the front door for guests, and it sat exactly, plus a few meters, from my uncle's sliding glass front door. The demolition contractors tried many times to destroy the stairs, but failed. They even used a heavy-duty jackhammer, and to no avail, the rock stairs were like they were made from diamond. My uncle simply told the contractors to just clean the area and leave the stairs to him. The reason for that was, as what my uncle told me, that during the night he can see figures sitting at those stairs as if it was waiting for something. Sometimes there was only one, sometimes two, and sometimes there was more than 10. Uncle told us that the figures came in multiple sizes and they all looked like they were made from black smoke. Solid enough for you to make the shape, but translucent enough that you can see through them. After asking the opinion and advice of a few ustas, Islamic scholars, my uncle did a qiyam, staying all night praying, and after the morning prayer before sunrise, he took out a huge hammer and swings. He was expecting a huge shock from the swing once it hits the stair, yet he said that instead of the hard and solid stone he and contractors experienced a few days before, the stairs crumbled easily. It was like hitting a sand castle, he said. He immediately destroyed the rest, and by the time the sun rises, the area was flat, and somehow the soft and sand-like stones my uncle experienced earlier turned back to hard, solid stone. He immediately cleansed the area and threw away the stones to the sea, which was only a kilometer from the house. Thank you, ThothofTotems, the author. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you already haven't, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any new episodes. See you again soon, and until then, please, be safe.